Joining me now, the author of On Guard, William Lane Craig. Good to have you on the broadcast.
Thank you, Hank. Good to be with you.
Why is apologetics, from your perspective, so important?
Well, I think there's several reasons. One reason would be it's a means of creating a culture in which Christianity can still be heard as a viable option for thinking people. My wife and I lived for 13 years in Europe, and the prevailing culture in Europe is so deeply secular, so post-Christian, that to invite people to believe in Jesus Christ is like inviting them to believe in the tooth fairy. It seems that absurd to them. Part of the task of apologetics is to shape a cultural milieu or context here in the United States where the gospel can still be heard as a viable option for people. So that would be one reason. A second reason I think it's so important is because of the effects in the life of the believer himself. As Christians, we're called not just to be converts to Christ, but to be disciples, that is, learners of Christ. And part of learning to love God with all of our minds is being equipped to articulate what we believe and why we believe it. And when we go through times of doubt or spiritual dryness, this can be tremendously helpful in persevering in the Christian faith rather than just riding the emotional roller coaster. And then the third reason, I think, is that it's a vital tool in evangelism. We see people coming to Christ all the time through giving presentations of the gospel coupled with an intellectual defense of the truth claims of the Christian faith. So for those three reasons, I think that the study of the defense of the faith is a vital part of Christian maturity and Christian discipleship.
I've oftentimes said that the real issue is never evangelism. The real issue is equipping for evangelism. If you're equipped to communicate the gospel, you're going to have the most incredible experience, the power of the Holy Spirit moving through you in the process of changing another life for time and for eternity. Talk about the fruit of becoming an equipped evangelist.
Well, I think it will make you bolder and more forthright in your sharing Christ. I see this happen on university campuses where I do debates with university professors, and the Christian side usually emerges head and shoulders above the non-Christian position in these debates. And the bracing effect that this has upon Christian students is just tangible. They get so excited to share their faith because they're convinced it's true. They can give good reasons for why they believe what they do. They're proud to be Christians rather than ashamed. And so I think there's few things that can make a person a bolder and more faithful witness for Christ than having good answers to the unbeliever's questions and good reasons for what you believe.
Speaking of your debates, an argument you use in almost all of your debates goes something like this: whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. How is that argument a powerful counter to the notion of philosophical naturalism?
Well, what it shows is that the natural world is not all there is. The natural world came into being at some point in the finite past, and since something just doesn't come into being from nothing, it shows that there has to be a literally supra-natural, transcendent cause beyond the natural order, upon which the natural order depends for its very existence. So this is, I think, a very powerful argument for a supernatural reality, and therefore for the falsity of naturalism, which says that nature is all there is.
In your book, you contend that the moral argument is the most effective of all arguments for the existence of God. Why?
I think the reason is that it really connects with people where they live. You can ignore the evidence for the beginning of the universe and live your life in a normal way if you want to. You can ignore the evidence for design and get by in life. But every day you get up, you answer the question by how you live, whether or not you think other people have objective moral value or are just worthless, animated bits of matter to be used for your own purposes. So the moral argument is inescapable because every day by how we live, we answer the question of whether we think there are objective morals and duties. And therefore, we're faced with the question, if there are such things, where do they come from? What's their basis? How do you explain it?
Talking to William Lane Craig. He's research professor of philosophy at Talbot School of Theology, a tremendous apologist and debater, and author of On Guard. It's a book that you need in your library. It's available through the Ministry of the Christian Research Institute. You can order it online at equip.org. When you write me at Post Office Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. And as always, when you speak with our resource consultants at 888-7000-CRI. How significant, Dr. Craig, is the issue of cosmic origins?
Well, I think it's one of the many arguments for the existence of God. I think we're living at a time in history where physical science is more open to the existence of a creator and designer of the universe than at any time in recent memory. And so I think we have very powerful grounds for thinking that the universe is not eternal, that it's not all there is, that it's dependent upon a supernatural cause. And if that's true, that narrows down the field of the world's religions to basically the great monotheistic faiths like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because it eliminates pantheism, it eliminates naturalism, it eliminates polytheism. Really, this notion that the universe has a transcendent creator and designer narrows the field down to basically these great monotheisms.
In a chapter that's titled, What About Suffering? You write this: the health and wealth gospel and the gospel of positive thinking that are being proclaimed in various megachurches and denominations are false gospels that are setting people up for a fall. How so?
Because it leads people to expect that anyone who is really walking with God will lead a life that is free of suffering, that is prosperous and materially happy. And since that is false, people will be devastated when they encounter pointless and seemingly gratuitous suffering in the lives of themselves, their family, their children. And those people will be racked with doubt and disappointment with God because they're believing in a sort of Santa Claus deity that is not the God of the Bible.
One of the things that I love are the books that are excellent in terms of their content, but also very well laid out. And I think On Guard certainly meets those requirements. Talk about the format of the book for just a moment.
Well, it begins with a chapter on the absurdity of life without God to motivate people to think about this question, because in our day and age, apathy is the greatest enemy, I think, the sort of whatever attitude. And then it goes into 4 chapters that give positive reasons to believe that God exists. Following that case for God, I then have the chapter on the problem of suffering and evil in the world, which is the most powerful evidence against God, I think, and try to answer that. Then, having established that God exists, we move into the person of Jesus of Nazareth and ask, who did Jesus of Nazareth think himself to be? And I show how the historical Jesus made these radical personal claims by which he put himself in the very place of God. And then I look at the historical evidence for Jesus' resurrection, which I think is God's vindication of those radical personal claims for which he was crucified. And finally, we look at the objection so current in society today that Christ cannot be the only way to God, that all religions, or most religions, are equally valid paths of salvation. And I defend the view that Christ and Christ alone is God's chosen path of salvation. So that the book as a total gives you a full case for the Christian faith, as well as answers to the principal objections that are brought against it.
Thank you so much, Bill. We'll try to put this book into the hands of as many people as possible so that they might be always prepared to give an answer.
Well, thank you very much.
God bless you, my friend.
Thank you.